next guest needs no introduction. Former Reform UK chairman, now in charge of leading their DOGE unit, investigating wasteful spending in councils being run by Reform. Of course, Zia Yusuf. Zia, welcome along to the show. Welcome back. Lots to get through, including the Online Safety Act, which you have highlighted two key parts amongst the litany of outrage, but two key particular parts of this which have caused you big concern. Just explain what they are.
Yeah, well, I want to make sure everyone watching this programme understands that this Online Safety Act, Orwellianly named, is plunging this country into a China-style surveillance state. And so the two key things I want to flag inside the Act. Section 44, which allows the Secretary of State to unilaterally force Ofcom to change the rules about what needs to be censored and what doesn't, without an act of Parliament, without a vote. So basically, it's a death knell of democracy in that respect. The second one is Section 179, which is even more insidious. What it does is make it illegal to say something that is false, that causes, and I quote, non-trivial psychological harm. And it's not just making that illegal, it is forcing social media companies to proactively censor that speech. And the penalties that are being imposed on these social media companies are things like 10% of global revenues and potentially criminal sanction for management. So what's that going to do, Ben? It's going to create an incentive structure for social media companies to over-censor, because that's the rational thing to do if you're trying to protect shareholder value. And we've already seen in the less than 48, I think 36 hours since this thing has come into force, we've seen protests against migrant hotels in Leeds being actively censored on X, by the way. And X is, thanks to Elon, supposed to be the last bastion of free speech. We're seeing tweets which criticise immigration being censored. And now the Telegraph reported last night the Prime Minister has brought about a quote, and I quote, an elite police force, not to protect British people from illegal migrants and the crime they're committing, but to monitor anti-migrant activity. We are slipping into a world which would, frankly, make Xi Jinping blush.
Two really shocking points there. The sort of censoring of the migrant protests on X, for example, do you think that fell under the second point you mentioned there, which is non-physical psychological harm?
Non-trivial psychological harm. So, yeah, exactly. So this is a totally different threshold to incitement to violence, which is one thing. Now the threshold is literally hurting someone's feelings, right? But here's the point, Ben. What's happening now? No, so what that comes under in terms of the Act is, quote, harmful content. And I quote, in some cases, it actually talks about legal but harmful. And just before the camera started rolling, we were having a conversation. You said, who determines that? And I'll tell you who will determine that. The very last people, the people watching this programme, would want determining it. And I want to remind the viewers, as much as Keir Starmer is an abomination and we despise this Labour government, it was the Tories who created this whole situation. It was the Tories who voted it through pretty much unanimously, including the likes of Jenrick, including the likes of Braverman, the ones who now present themselves as anti all of this stuff. They voted all of this stuff through. And I want to emphasise, if we don't do something about this quickly, it is going to be normalised. And I'm telling you, these social media companies, even X with the might of Elon behind him, is going to be no match for the brutality and the power of the British state. Before we move on, very quickly, you're a tech guy. You've run a business. You sold a business. What will these social media companies do? Will they just stop wanting to operate in the UK, or just over censor? Look, if you're a great founder CEO, you've got really loyal management teams. I think asking them to risk going to jail for you for considerable periods of times, look at Lucy Connolly, is too much to ask. So you look at the incentive structure they've created. They have created an equivalence of allowing child pornography on your platform, on the social media platform, with footage of a perfectly lawful protest against illegal immigration. That is what this insidious bill has done. So I think what we're going to see is a massive increase in censorship, and people watching this programme, their voice is going to get muzzled. And also, by the way, if you want to block children watching porn, they're just going to sign up to VPNs anyway. These kids aren't stupid these days. You will reform if you get into government. You'll do what with the Act? Just well, I'll tell you what. Nigel is going to go. You'll hear more from about what we're going to do in the coming weeks, but we're going to go much further than just make sure this madness doesn't happen. We're going to do everything that we can constitutionally to enshrine freedom of speech in this country. Moving on, there's been a job advert, I'm going to just summarise this, in Manchester, at Manchester Community Centre, looking for a Sharia law administrator, Zia, paying £23,500 a year. I thought Sharia law wasn't active in this country. Why is a community centre hiring a Sharia law administrator? Well, you know, what's really interesting when I looked at the research on this, to me, somebody advocating for Sharia law is effectively advocating for sedition in this country. So you would assume that would be illegal. It's illegal in the United States. It's illegal in any sensible country. It's not illegal in this country because Gordon Brown took it off the statute.
It was Gordon Brown.
It was one of the last things he did as Prime Minister was take sedition off the statute books. Look, here's the fundamental point. We have a set of laws in this country. If in England, it's England and Wales, we have the English and Welsh law, and we have Scottish law. That is it. There are no other types of law. It doesn't matter what religion you are, what race you are. Those are the laws that we abide by. And my view, and Reform's view, is anybody advocating or promoting alternative forms of law to that is engaging in sedition, and I think it should be illegal.
Yeah, there's also Sharia courts popping up all over the country, and isn't it interesting, Gordon Brown sold the goals at the lows and then opened the door to Sharia law, so yeah, well done Gordon Brown. Very quickly, before we move on, I want to get your thoughts on this polling for Jeremy Corbyn's new party. Some jesters are calling it Jezbollah, it's actually called Your Party, but they're splitting the Labour voters here, which I think, correct me if I'm wrong, in Reform camps you'd be celebrating, no?
Well, look, we're still some time before the next general election, sadly. But in two polls now have come out, Salvation, I think, and Find Out now. If you take the average of those, any analysis of that, inserting a Jeremy Corbyn party into the mix puts Nigel not only in number 10 Downing Street, but puts Reform north of 400 seats. I've always said we needed 350 to 400 seats to have the mandate needed to transform the country and reverse all of the damage that the Tories and Labour have done. Look, I think Jeremy Corbyn has terrible policies. He has awful ideas, but say what you will about the guy, he does have fans. Unlike Keir Starmer, and also, he does have people. He stands up for things that he believes in. As awful as those things are, he has a big presence on social media. So does Zara Sultana. I think this is a huge threat to Labour. And yes, look, I think it makes Nigel being in number 10 that much more likely.
Yeah, I mean, I've said what you just said there about Corbyn for the past couple of nights. You know, you may not, he's a massively raging commie and friends with whoever, but at least you know over the past 20 years what he stood for. Yeah. He's been authentic, whether you agree with his principles or not. You know what he stands for. When it comes to the Prime Minister, he doesn't believe in anything. So at least you can give Corbyn that. Finally, is Nigel going to be seeing President Trump over the next few days?
I won't speak for Nigel, but I will say this. Nigel, he's obviously very good friends with President Trump. He has gone out of his way to ensure he does not interfere with United Kingdom-US relations. He is, as he has said publicly many times, at the government's disposal, because he's a patriot, to do whatever he can to improve that relationship.
OK, great stuff. Zia Yusuf, thank you very much. Appreciate your company. Until next time.